Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we're looking at a very interesting topic in Italian. Did you know that Italian words can sometimes have two different plurals? And the plural forms, obviously there's two of them, so it means that they have two different meanings. Yeah, this is super tricky and super challenging sometimes. And I want to show you the most common ones. I'm sure there's more than the ones that I will be listing out in this video. But I hope that this list will help you to not make mistakes when you encounter these tricky words. Remember that you can download the entire list for free by clicking on the link that you find below this video. Okay? Please remember to subscribe to my channel. It's completely free for you and it helps me to keep up these free materials for everybody. Okay? Let's start with the first one. The first one is il braccio. Il braccio means the arm, so as part of the human body. This word is tricky because when you're keeping it with that meaning, but you're making it plural, so you want to say arms, you will need to change the gender. So il braccio, masculine singular. When we have two, they become feminine plural. Le braccia. So that's a first difficulty that you have. And il braccio, le braccia is the word that you need when you're talking about the body part, okay? Arms. For example, ho due braccia. I have two arms, okay? Now, I told you that you can have a second plural. This second plural is masculine. So it becomes I bracci, which is masculine and plural. The meaning changes. It's more technical and it's more figurative, okay? So it doesn't move too far from the original meaning, but it changes a bit. Look at these examples to make it more clear. So you're going to use I bracci when you're talking about the arms of a crane. I bracci della gru, so technical. When you're talking about branches or like different departments of a building, okay, so once again, figuratively. I bracci di un edificio, okay? Or when you're talking about like physical, mechanical arms, okay? I bracci meccanici. So you understand that it's still talking about a type of arm, but it's not the one of the body. The second word is il muro. Il muro is a word that's used to talk about the wall. So this behind me is il muro. So think of the walls of a house or like along a street, like a small wall along a street. When you make it plural, in this case, it stays masculine and it becomes I muri. Okay? Un muro, due muri. For example, i muri del mio ufficio sono bianchi. So the walls of my office are white. The second plural option is when it becomes feminine. So feminine plural, le mura. Okay? Once again, we're not moving too far away from the original meaning, but it changes a little bit. This word is used to talk about the city walls, okay? Or like the idea of a home as a protected space. So it's more of like a figurative wall. Look at the example. Mi piace rimanere in casa tra queste quattro mura. Okay? I like to stay home within these four walls. Okay? The idea is the same. We're talking about walls, but you're talking more of a protected space. Luca è circondata da antiche mura. Lucca, the city, is surrounded by ancient walls. So use the normal, the standard il muro, I muri only for these. Everything else that's figurative or that is a bigger situation like walls surrounding a city, go with le mura. The next one are actually two words, but they have similar meaning. Il grido, l'urlo, which means shout, scream, which become le grida, le urla, feminine, plural. In this case, it's used for human screams or cries, okay? So if I'm screaming or I'm crying, I would use those. Look at this example. If I want to say the child's screams attracted the parents' attention, I would use le urla del bambino attirano l'attenzione dei genitori. So it's a human, it's a baby, okay? I'm using le urla. So you're not talking about a boy or girl, a human being, but you're talking about an animal making sounds. Then in this case, you will need to change the plural, okay? And you will make it into gli urli, I gridi. So it's going to be masculine, plural. Once again, use these only for animal sounds. Look at the example. If I want to say the cries of the crows are very annoying and loud, I will say I gridi dei corvi sono molto fastidiosi e rumorosi. The next one is l'osso. L'osso means bone. When we make it plural, it becomes le ossa. So it becomes feminine plural, which is already tricky enough. Okay? You will use it when you're talking about the human skeleton. Okay? So like the human bones or bones in general. Let's look at this example. Lindsay si è rotta le ossa della gamba sciando. So Lindsay broke the bones in her leg while she was skiing. If you make it masculine and plural, you will have gli ossi. In this case, you're not referring to human bones, but you're referring to bones in general, okay? Or to animal bones. For example, al cane piace mangiare gli ossi della bistecca. So the dog likes to eat the bones of the steak, like the remaining part of the steak. The next one is il fondamento, which means the foundation. Or we can juxtapose that with the plural form le fondamenta. It's used for talking about the foundation of a building, okay? So like the building blocks, the part where you need to start when you're building a house. So if you want to say that the foundation of this house are solid, you will say le fondamenta di questa casa sono solide. Be careful because I fondamenti, so when you have a masculine plural version, you're going to use it when you want to say, you want to mention principles or like the basics of a subject. For example, if I want to say the foundations of physics are essential, I will say I fondamenti della fisica sono la base di tutto. So, be careful, you're not going to say le fondamenta, you're going to say I fondamenti. Once again, you notice that these words have a common meaning, but they also have this little change of plural that can be very confusing. The next word is il labbro. Now, that's the lip. If you're making it plural, le labbra. And in this case, you're talking about the human lips. Il labbro, le labbra. Let's put it into a sentence. If I want to say that Maria has beautiful red lips, I will say Maria ha delle belle labbra rosse. Okay, le labbra. But I can also have the plural with I labbri, which is masculine and plural. In this case, you're talking about edges and borders. You can talk about edges and borders of a wound or of actually an object, okay? So if I wanted to say something like the edges of the blanket don't align, you will say I labbri della coperta non combaciano. So be sure to not say le labbra, because le labbra is only the human lips. The next one is il filo, which means thread or wire. You can have a masculine, I fili, masculine plural, so you have more wires, okay? So you're using it to talk about like physical wires or threads. Il filo, I fili. So for example, I fili del telefono, the telephone wires. Or I fili della luce, the electrical cables. Or I fili di cotone, so cotton threads, okay? Il filo, I fili. But you can also have a second plural, le fila, so when it becomes feminine plural. In this case, is used in a figurative way. It talks about plot, strategy, structure. Let's look at an example to make this clear. If I want to say, like, the thread of a speech, I fili di un discorso, like the main idea of a speech, okay? Now, be careful here because we can further complicate this word for you. Yeah, because you can also have the word la fila. Do not confuse that because la fila means the queue. And when it becomes plural, it will be le file, okay? So that's like one little word that can create lots of questions. Now, how about frutto and frutti and frutta? Panic. Frutto is from plants. So, la pera è il frutto dell'albero del pero. So, frutto is the actual fruit. Like, pear is the fruit of the pear tree. But you can also have it more of a figurative meaning when you want to say that something is the result. So, for example, the fruit of my hard work, okay? Il frutto delle mie fatiche. When you're making it plural, you have la frutta. So, la frutta is the word that you need to use when you're talking about the food category. So, you're not making it plural, you're talking about the category. So, if I want to say fruit is good for your health, I will say la frutta fa bene alla salute. I will not say I frutti fanno bene alla salute because I want to talk about the entire category. Now, these are just a few words that have this double plural that can be confusing. If you know extra ones, write them in the comments. Share them with the other people that just like you are learning Italian with me in this moment. Okay? I hope this video was helpful. Remember to download the entire thing in PDF format so that you can review it whenever you need to. This is it for today. I will see you next week. Un bacio. Ciao.